Everyone, welcome back to Money Talks. And in today's video, we're going to talk about how to professionally vet a client before starting a real estate transaction. Lots of emphasis on professionally. So, with no further ado, I will tell you something that for me, it's the most professional way of understanding how a customer gets serious about a transaction. Before I get into a lot of details, I do want to say every real estate agent, every realtor, every brokerage anywhere in any state is going to be different. But one of the things that I found really, really useful as I'm still with my training and understanding some of the things in the real estate world that I hadn't seen before, it's a buyer's package. So this is something in which, again, every person will do it differently. Every person will use these tools in different ways to present or to convey their understanding of this. So that's why the title of this video it's professionally, because we're not being judgmental when it comes to betting someone. We're looking more at their qualifications, and that plays a big role in the real estate transaction. So with that being said, I will tell you one of the things that I've learned over the course of training, being at the office, fellow realtors, meeting people, it's what matters the most. Like that face to face interaction, it's super important because although a lot of training will say, call the person, have your 20-minute talk, here's a list of questions that you need to make, it makes it feel robotic. And at the end of the day, real estate, it's a world in which is all about the relationships that you're building with people, the trust that they have on you, and the information that you're bringing into the table. With that being said, this is something super important that I want to share before we really get into the video. Value. Anytime you're meeting someone, you're introducing value to the conversation. You're introducing value to the person. You're introducing value to the understanding of real estate. So, you'll see more, you'll hear more about this over the interaction of this video. But with that being said, why does betting matter? As realtors, we love to serve people. It's super exciting to meet someone and be able to be part of the journey that they have of home ownership. But we also got to be strategic and realistic because at the end of the day, as a realtor, you are a business. You are your own business. So betting a client, it's a really important, if not the most important thing of the success that your business is going to have. Because when you're properly setting up that betting, or as we'll talk later down the video, the process, then you're making sure that one, you're spending time with those people that are truly ready. Two, you're minimizing any surprises during that transaction. And three, your business is, or yourself, or the transaction, it's based upon the trust and not chaos that is all over the place. Anywho, with that being said, let's talk about how to actually bet buyers. So the initial conversation for me, that's what we said at the beginning of the video. It's really important to meet that person because here's where you're going to have what we call the discovery. And those questions vary, and they vary from real estate agent to real estate agent. They vary from broker to broker. They vary from training to training. Everyone tells you something different. And at the end of the day, one of the things that I've noticed is that there's going to be questions that no matter who is part of the training or what brokerage you're part of or whatever, they're going to be really common when it comes up to the discovery phase, when you have a lead or when you have a customer. These are typically more based on leads because when you have a customer that you know personally, you don't really need to make these questions because you already have that rapport built into. It's kind of easier to make the conversation, but that's why betting customers, I should have probably put in the video, betting leads, but the video could probably go both ways. Anyways, going back to it, one of the most common questions, let's see. Oh, the typical one. Have you spoken to a lender? And why is it that this question's all the time? Because again, we're trying to vet the customer, the buyer. So if you haven't talked to a lender yet, then you don't really know exactly what your qualifications are. So that question comes all the time. What's a motivating thing that it's making you move? Or why are you in the market right now? Are you currently renting, or do you own a home that you would like to sell before buying another house? Is there a time frame that you have? Would that be 1 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, more than 6 months? All of these questions, what allow is for what we said in prior videos, put that buyer in any of the three categories of leads, whether it's been cold lead, warm lead, or hot lead, right? Here's what I think, in my opinion. You don't know what you don't know. And every person knowing more or having more information could immediately jump from the cold lead to the hot lead. But this solely depends on you, the realtor, the real estate agent. And I'm going to tell you why. So, again, I'm a realtor. I'm not a lender. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a CPA. I'm not, you know, I just do my own thing, right? Which is selling real estate, right? Showing, doing all the negotiations and all that stuff, right? But because you are in the market, because you're in the real estate market, you do get to hear a lot of different things that happen inside of the market. As an example, if I was to find someone and that someone, let's say that referral comes around and I'm having my initial conversation with them, my questions are more of like, tell me more about you. So, for example, hello, my name is ABC and I work for BCA. What is your name? Oh, my name is BCD. Well, Mr. BCD, tell me more about yourself. I first of all thank you for having the time to talk to me today. I would love to answer all the real estate questions that you have today, but tell me more about yourself. Oh, you know what? Well, you're welcome for the time. Thank you for your time, for speaking to me. I've been on Realtor.com, I've been on Zillow, and we've been renting for the past 5 years. I've talked to my wife, and I'm gonna put a little pause in there. In my head, I'm making all these notes. They've already said we're renting for the last 5 years. I was talking to my wife. So, my next course of action, as soon as we have a stop, and that stop is going to come from the customer, I will say, well, before we go any further, what's your wife's name? I would love to address both of you guys by your names. And I know you mentioned your wife in there. Is she there so we can have her on the call so that she could also tell us what she is looking for as well? Including everyone that is potentially on the transaction allows for a seamless and a more trust building interaction, in my opinion, or that's what I've learned so far. Because my initial conversation, although a lot of people say is your discovery time, talk to them about the lender, talked about this, blah, 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 blah. For me, it's more about really introducing to the person. Because within that conversation, after, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes, maybe 15, 20, as most people say, that's the average time in which you actually have your discovery call. I always say, you know what, Mr. BCA, was it BCA, BCD, whatever it was. It was a pleasure meeting you. I would love to actually meet you guys in person. So I know that you said you worked Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Let's go on Saturday the 10th to any coffee shop that you guys choose that it's close to you guys, because I would love to show you what the monopoly, I call it a monopoly, but what the buying guide is. And I call it a monopoly because it's literally from 1 all the way to 9. So it's like little steps, like baby step one, baby step two, baby step three, how real estate works. And I would love to inform you about all of this. Now that I know a little bit more about you guys, I would love for us to sit down and talk about all of these things so that we can get you the best and the most tailored home to you guys. A lot of people that, again, we were talking about the three different one, cold, warm, and hot. If they were on the cold, they're more than likely on the warm right now. So how do I jump from the warm to the hot? So in the conversation, let's say that customer BCD said something about, yes, we actually have our brother-in-law that recently bought their house, but he had to put $20,000 of down payment, and we don't have that amount, or something that says that there was a big hurdle along the way, and that stopped the person that bought that they know from buying. Here's where your experience as a realtor or real estate agent will allow to facilitate this conversation. This is what I would say. Well, let me tell you something, Mr. BCD. One of the things that I've learned in real estate is that every transaction is unique and different, and every situation is different. The same way that you're telling me this story, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that story with me. It's always hard to hear stories like that, but I also have a story for you, which, again, this is a 100% true story. Um, when you're in the broker, you talk to all your fellow realtors, and then you get to hear some good stories and some bad stories. But you want to share the good stories, right? So I will tell Mr. BCD, actually last week in our brokerage, one of the realtors were sharing that they had this one customer. They paid $785. This is just an example. I can't remember how much it was, but it was less than 1,000 for them to buy their house. They were a first time buyer, and you are a first time buyer, Mr. BCD. They had this type of income, they work right here, and they were able to qualify for what I know, this type of program without a lender. So it is imperative that we also talk about lenders and the different programs. Now, I'm not a lender, but I can introduce you to the ones that I have personally heard good stories about them. In this way, it kind of puts, or not, it doesn't kind of, it actually puts you in a big pedestal of knowledge. And here's where what we talked at the beginning of the video, the value that you are bringing into the table. The more value you bring into the buyer in that first initial conversation, for me, it's the key way to actually sit down with them and have a coffee and then do the next process. After that, obviously, this video is about betting. It's not about how I do things, but I'm putting my own experience in here so that you see that even though I'm betting at some point, which we'll get to it right now, there is different ways of also unbetting and transitioning one lead from one side to the other. Now, with that being said, um, when we talk about betting, yes, I may have already talked to them, sat down with them. Maybe I signed the buyer's representation and everything, and now we're getting into the pre-approval or the lending. At that point, that is your first betting. They go, they'll listen to you. We talk about all the points and how the real estate world works, and they're like, okay, I understand why I have to have a pre-approval letter from a lender, so let's go with a lender. And then the lender says, you know what, your debt to income is super high. You need to get this, and this low so we can approve you for XYZ. Well, that betting came out of the lender to you. And your time was not spent looking at homes and doing all this research and all that stuff. with each of the people that you're meeting around, just to find out they can't buy because they're not qualified. But at the same token, you've already planted a seed because you gave so much value to this lead that if they listen to what the lenders say, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever months, weeks down the road, they will look back for you because of the value that you had. But that's the very first way that I do my vetting. For me, 10 out of 10 people that I meet, I'm never going to say no just because I'm not going to be asking those questions of, you got to show me that you're pre approved, you got to do this, you got to do. No, 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 no. Let's meet up, let's add value to what your needs are, and then the vetting process does everything by itself. So the very first one is the pre approval. Number two, set expectations, or maybe, yeah, number two, setting expectations. Once you've confirmed, like, hey, we are pre approved for 500,000, this is an example, which a lot of homes are going to be in the 500,000 range, right? Be clear with your buyer of one, how will communication work? Do they prefer a text, a call, an email, a fly-in pigeon? I don't know. Any way that communication will go through, how will it be? Number two, the areas, price range. And number three, your availability. If you know that you don't work Sundays, make sure you communicate that. Like, hey, Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., call me and I will pick up my phone. But Sundays, it's my family day. If you set up that expectation, whatever works for you, right? Because everyone has a different schedule and things around. But if your expectations don't meet their expectations, then they're going to be looking elsewhere. And if you try to force their expectations into your workaround, you're going to find chaos. Now, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do exemptions and try to work around it, but I can tell you more than likely, if you don't set expectations, you're going to be working around the clock. And sometimes all those hours that you're putting into the work don't really give results. So, number two, set your expectations. Number four, this one's going to be a tough one for example, for myself as a newer agent. It's tougher to talk about it, and it's really easy to say it, not to do it. So I understand if you're saying this and you feel like, yeah, it's easy to say it, man. But checking their commitment level. So making the question, are you currently working with another agent? Well, first of all, you should always ask that because you don't want to, be on a really bad problem in there if they're already represented and you want to go in there. But you've got to check their commitment level. And I can tell you this, the commitment level really comes when you're presenting your buyer's representation agreement. If there's hesitation, I mean, one, it could be a communication thing, right? You always want to explain the document in full. You don't ever want to sign before you explain to them what it is and what it means. Because remember, you are the professional. You're looking at these documents, hopefully, often in your time at the office, versus a buyer that's going to look at them maybe once every 10, 15, 20, 30 years because they're buying real estate. Hopefully, quicker, right? But not as often as you would. They don't know what they're signing, so they want to know what it is. But once you've added value, then this doesn't really become a problem. And that would be like my number three. If you're presenting the buyer's agreement and there's some hesitation, maybe there's not that level of commitment. So check up on that too. So, with that being said, I think this would cover anything for buyers. We may talk about sellers in a different video because I think it's super important to talk about both sides. I think for sellers, it's a little bit more hard because you see way more documents, you see more conversations, you see lots of things. And as a newer agent, you typically see buyer referrals, not really selling referrals. So we'll probably make another video about this. But to wrap this up, betting clients, it's not an easy thing either. You've got to work on the structure that you want your business to run in. And I hope this video gave you a little bit of a help. I'm putting my personal experience on this, but this is something that I hope it helps you. Any other questions, any other things that you guys think that I didn't cover or anything, always make sure to put them in the comments. I will read them and make videos about them. So hopefully the real estate talk always keeps up and we are able to address all the questions that everyone have. So thank you guys and up until next video.